Chris Oatley's Artcast, episode 89, an interview with Jason Brubaker, DreamWorks visual development artist and creator of reMIND, Part 2. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Chris Oatley's Artcast. I'm Chris Oatley. A former Disney artist, gone rogue, I'm now the director of the Oatley Academy of Visual Storytelling, where I get to work every day with the most positive, passionate, collaborative community of creatives I have ever known. You can find more art and story podcasts from some of the most inspiring voices in animation, games, VFX, comics, and new media at oatleyacademy.com/shows. Matt Ashcraft, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Matt, you solve many problems. You solve many problems at the Oatley Academy. Can you give the listeners a little bit of your background and then explain your role at the Oatley Academy?
Essentially, I'm a web developer who also has kind of an unhealthy obsession with stories and storytelling. So my primary focus is always, something technological. I just kind of have a knack for it, but it has to be centered around telling a story. And, I always find myself circling back to that and making art through that. So for the Academy, I pretty much just go through, and when you get stuck, I come in and pick up the puzzle pieces.
It's interesting that you never lose sight of this idea of storytelling, even when we're talking about the navigation on the website or the forums or something super technical.
Yeah, I think it should be a focus kind of no matter what you're doing. And it took me a long time to really understand that. My background wasn't always technical. I never once thought I was going to do web development. I just didn't really have interest in it. But I spent 15 years in the food and wine industry, and I kept coming back to wanting to create an experience. And it was always about creating something that told a story.
Wow.
Whether it was, how food was arranged on a plate, or if you were talking about the regions and the factors that go into your wine or your coffee. So it took a long time for me to really to make it click that no matter what you do, you're telling a story. And if you're not, then I think you're missing a key component, and you're missing a chance to connect.
Goodness gracious. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, so I just naturally kind of took that as I started to do web development. And I've been doing web development for close to a decade now. I took that approach into, everything I do, and whatever you see on the screen should tell you something about the Academy or about what we're trying to do. It shouldn't just be technical or even just pretty.
Wow, it's no wonder you found your way here. That's amazing. I love it.
I'm still a little fuzzy on how I found my way to you.
On that note, while we're on the topic, friends, we are going to get to introducing the Jason Brubaker episode, but Matt is he as you can already tell, he's a gold mine of information and perspective. I have no doubt you will find helpful. So let me ask you this, Matt. When it comes to artists and their websites, what do you think are some key areas, or one key area where this experience, this sensory experience, the storytelling experience breaks down? I know you look at a lot of artists' websites, so you definitely have perspective in this area.
Well, a lot of times it happens right on the homepage. I mean, as much as you'd like to think that people would keep that as their focus and try to treat that as their main entry point, a lot of times there's just simply too much going on. You have advertisements, or you're trying to cram all your different content in there. Or it's just, for like a simple portfolio site, it's not curated. So you have a too wide variety of things, and so people don't really get what it is you do.
Right.
That's the big one. Another one is, say, in somebody's archives, as you're trying to scroll through, if it's just a list of image titles or something like that, that doesn't really tell anybody anything. And it's hard for people to really go through and find what it is they're looking for on your site, or even like little tiny thumbnails that you have to click to open up to see. And people just don't have the patience to sit and scroll through everything to find these nuggets. So we kind of have to grab people's attention on almost every single page.
Yeah, that's amazing, and make it as visual as possible. That's something that we've been working on a lot on the Oatly Academy site, just trying to make that as visual an experience as we can. And of course, this stuff takes so much time. So there's a lot of things that we see a version in our minds that has not been realized yet, that we know the site needs to be. But yeah, that's true, isn't it? How many times have I seen a thumbnail that's a cropped-in square of an illustration, and I don't know it from the thumbnail if that's what I'm looking for?
Right. You can see maybe if it's rendered nicely, but you can't see the composition. You can't see kind of the stuff.
The storytelling. The
storytelling of it. And it really takes it away where you're trying to push quantity versus quality.
Wow. Well, that's an unexpected little lesson there that we just tripped over. That's excellent, So yeah, just make the story your priority, friends. When you're really, that applies to your social media profiles as well, I think, but especially on your website. So before we get to the Jason Brubaker episode, we want to remind you of an opportunity that is mere weeks away, and that is the Oatly Academy Backstage Pass. And this is something we've been hard at work on for the past few months. And we wanted to create an opportunity for those who love the podcasts to support the podcasts, and by extension, the school. And so we created the Backstage Pass. And of course, we weren't just going to set up a donation button or something like that. We wanted to actually create an immersive storytelling experience, just like we've been talking about here. And we wanted to create something that we thought was awesome, something that we would want. And thus was born the Oatly Academy Backstage Pass. And I talked about it on the previous episode, so most of you listening to this already know about it, but just a quick review. The Oatly Academy Backstage Pass includes access to an exclusive new show called Escape from Art Jail. And Matt, we know what that feels like, don't we? Being locked in art jail.
Yes.
So the goal there, of course, is to help you escape from whatever your version of art jail happens to be. And we address all the topics related to the business side of being a professional artist. And that's everything from portfolios to your website, to social media, to taxes, to invoicing, working with clients, all that stuff. And as I said on the previous episode, it isn't enough to be a good artist. It just is not enough these days. The industry is too competitive, and it is too easy to get access to your competition, the people competing with you for jobs. You have to become business savvy as well. And so that's the goal of that show, and to help you pursue creative freedom sincerely, that you have that sense of freedom, that you're no longer locked up or stuck in a particular set of circumstances.
So good.
We are very excited about it. And I should warn the listeners, it does get very intense. It's a hard-hitting show. We really tell it like it is and address head-on a lot of the fears that hold us back. But you can't get free without facing your fear. It's just, I don't know if there's any way around that. Also included are the extended versions of this Jason Brubaker interview, for example. We have about a 3.5 hour version of this interview that you can get access to, as well as interviews with Jenny Ely, Armand Serrano, Justin Rodriguez, and others, extended versions of the Paper Wings interviews, and deleted scenes. We have sequences that we recorded for previous podcasts that never actually made it to the show that we're still very proud of and we think have really great content in them. Those are available. You also get the episodes early. And art school talks. I've been, for the past couple years, recording the Q&A sessions and presentations that I do at various art schools across the country and also Canada. And those also will be available as part of the Backstage Pass. You can go and listen to those Q&A sessions. All kinds of fun surprises happen there. And then lastly, of course, you have the confidence and pride in knowing that you're supporting the Oatly Academy. The revenue from the Backstage Pass will go to create jobs and support our current employees and freelancers, and obviously support the operations of the site, hosting, all that kind of thing, and support the hosting for the podcast, the free podcast, as well as the extended versions in the Backstage Pass. And all our teachers, everything. We have obviously a lot of costs involved with doing what we do, and we release so much free content that this will make a big impact in helping to support us in those efforts. And there's more to come, in fact, but I'll keep the rest secret for now. If you're interested in the Backstage Pass, please go to oatlyacademy.com/BSPN, that's as in Backstage Pass notification, and join the notification list, and we'll email you as soon as the Backstage Pass is available. Again, that's oatlyacademy.com/BSPN. Well, this Jason Brubaker episode was something else.
Oh yeah, it was just, I think I've listened to it 3 or 4 times now.
He is so articulate.
Oh, yeah. He has these amazing stories, and he tells them so casually that it's just like, it's amazing.
We get a lot of inspiring insight into the power of hard work in this episode. Mm-hmm. And specifically what happens when you decide to just power through and do the work, and the value of endurance. You know, he talks a lot about his years as a storyboard artist, and just how intense that work was, and how Jason doesn't acknowledge this directly, but I have to believe that his current productivity is directly linked to the intensity that he discovered he was capable of during those years as a story artist. He already had that intensity and that focus, but I feel like it was really put to the test during that time. Mm-hmm. And so he tells some stories, tells a lot of stories from there. And then he worked as an animator. He worked as an After Effects artist, of course. Why wouldn't you have every single job under the sun, Jason? And he works as an After Effects artist for a while, and has some really good stories there. And then, I guess somewhat surprisingly, that is what built the bridge to DreamWorks, his work as an After Effects artist. And really interesting how he broke in to DreamWorks. And then, of course, he shares stories as we approach the end of the episode. He shares stories about his time at DreamWorks and some things that he learned there. And we talk about painting and color when we get to that part. Is there anything else, Matt, that stood out to you that you want to highlight here at the beginning?
Yeah, I think his persistence and doing the right kind of work.
Yeah.
He touches on that a couple times. His persistence is inspiring.
Yeah.
And you can tell that he's fulfilled with what he does.
You can find Jason Brubaker's work at remindblog.com and sithrah.com, SITHRAH.com. And after the interview, Matt and I will come back and share a discussion topic. You can join us in the conversation in the comments at oatlyacademy.com/JB2, as in Jason Brubaker 2. And Matt, where can the listeners find you online?
They can find me at mattashcraft.com and on Twitter under Trollwind, TROLLWIND, and that's a long story.
Yeah. Oh my. And don't forget to join the notification list for the Oatly Academy Backstage Pass. You can do so at oatlyacademy.com/BSPN. Go there, join the list, and we will email you as soon as the Backstage Pass becomes available. It's interesting that you had this, and we've talked about this a little bit, your competitiveness and the hustle, that's what we call it in the American South, kids got hustle, means you really want it,
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I don't really know, actually, because like because I grew up in like Idaho, and everyone there, when I go back there, it's really like mellow and slow. And,
Right.
Someone has a project they're working on, and it's like a month later, they're still working on it, kind of barely advanced. And, when I wanted to do a project, man, I would work on it every night. And be
me
like,
too.
I got to get this thing done because time's wasting. And, and people would be like, how are you getting all this done? And I'm like, I don't know. I just worked on it every day. I was focused and dedicated. But to answer your question, I don't know what started that. I think it's just because I really didn't want, okay, this is it. I really didn't want to go get a button-up shirt,
right?
With an undershirt, tucked in with the belt and tie job, or go work at Dow Tile on the assembly line, or go work at McDonald's flipping burgers. To me, it's like I love this stuff, this art, and I want to do that. And I can see, all the generations. If I just look around me, I can see all generations of people, and they're all stuck in some place in life.
Yeah.
And I want to work so hard now that I don't look back and see myself stuck in a situation. That was kind of a thing that I kept thinking about a lot. And I think growing up in a place where there was no opportunities really did that to me. When I worked the construction job with my brother, I was like, this job motivates me to sit down and draw because I can't stay here forever. I will go insane.
Yeah.
It's not my job.
Yeah, I was just talking to Laura about how we feel like a lot of artists, especially aspiring artists, maybe need a new definition of what hard work is. And we were both, I was a complete nerd. I was bullied in school. I couldn't get home fast enough. And Laura was a misfit and kind of an outsider and more of an emo poet kind of person, And anyway, the point being, I would come home, I would survive the bus ride home was the worst. That was the worst. I mean, that could end, and then getting off the bus and the few kids, that was terrible. But I would survive that, and then I would get home, I'd let myself in. I was always the first one home, and I would go to my room and I'd start drawing. Yeah. And I mean, every day I would draw. And often, I would say probably usually, I would draw late into the night, and every single day. And I didn't know it at the time, but my subconscious was learning the value, like on a visceral level. I was learning the value of that day in, day out, long hours, the grind, but I loved it. That was the thing. I was so happy drawing, especially, compared to the rest of my life. The rest of my reality was filled with a lot of pain, and not because of circumstance, because of butt heads, and anyway, so it's like anyways, I was saying to Laura today, I was like, in a way, I'm not grateful that some of the stuff happened to me that did happen to me as a kid through being a nerd and a misfit, but I am grateful that I learned what I learned about art. Yeah. And I learned the rewards. So it's like it wasn't an external thing. Like, you need to learn the value of hard work. It's like, I taught myself the value of hard work. I learned that just from experience because I saw the payoff. Yeah. Yeah. In Idaho, everyone gets married when they're like 20. Right? Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. You get out of high school, and if you're not married, there's something wrong with you. Right. And you have problems. And so there was like this pressure to get married before you even did your career. And I remember saying over and over to people, and I had girlfriends, a couple girlfriends, and I would always be like, I have got to get my career before I get married because I'm not going to be stuck, Right. Not saying getting married is a bad choice, but I want to work this thing out before I make that family decision, And so that was another huge motivator. And then there was another thing I just remembered too. Like, you're talking about kind of like being picked on and stuff. Right. Well, I don't really talk about this much, but like, I have eye problems, like where one of my eyes, the muscles doesn't really work. And so if I look at people the right way, it looks like I'm looking at them cross-eyed and stuff. And so I was really self-conscious, and I even still am. So it's bizarre that I even get up in front of people and talk nowadays. But that self-consciousness of, people seeing me, my eyes are messed up or whatever. And I would be made fun of sometimes, but
I felt kind of alone in that sense. And so I would go and I could escape. And I don't know if I'd say escape, but I think I poured so much more of my time into doing these things alone, like drawing and working at this, because people really admired that about, what I could do. And so in a way, I like embrace it. There's problems and like defects or whatever it is, but that kind of, in a way, pushed me to keep honing this other thing.
Yeah.
Right. To escape that, I honed this. And then to continue what you were saying, every personal project I've ever worked on really hard has always opened the doors for career moves or new opportunities. And I learned that from a really young age too, because, I worked on my little Scruffy comic, and then suddenly the teacher said, "Oh, I know the editor of the newspaper." And then suddenly I was in the newspaper at 11, So that taught me early that if I just sit down and finish something, right, an opportunity could open itself up. I finished my comic book in high school and I got a nationwide publishing deal, which was pretty big at the time, because we didn't have the internet, which is instantly worldwide publishing deal now. So I've applied that ever since, and even after I moved here, like I was working on reMIND as an animation, trying to learn how to animate. Right. My purpose was to learn how to animate. And I got this thing done, and that's what opened up the door for DreamWorks. Because I started getting animation jobs, and then
it's amazing.
But it's all the personal projects, and those only happen when you're focused and dedicated to it.
Yeah. Okay, so the Wachowskis. What happened after the Wachowskis? So you moved. You're going to move, right? Okay, so you're going to move to LA. Yeah. That was where we were.
I'm making the plans. I'm fixing my car so it can actually drive me there.
Right, okay.
And I have a 2-month window. I find the people that I'm going to stay at their place. They're in Lakewood, and show up at their door. Knock, knock. Hey, I'm Jason. Remember your cousin's friend said I could stay with you? Yeah, okay, come on in. Here's your room. And tell the agent, I'm in town, go, give me work like you promised. And sure enough, okay, looking back, this is a trip. It's insane that this worked, okay? Because how many agents, sleazy agents, are like, I can make you a star,
Yeah, right.
And it's just all, give us $1,000 and we'll give, to do a headshot, or give us money and we'll blah, 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 So anyway, with all that said, this agent actually was legit. They worked, and immediately, within a couple days, they got me a movie job to do storyboards for this little low-budget movie called Boogie Boy. You can find it at your local Blockbuster video. No, so Boogie Boy, it's this real low-budget, kind of cheesy, R-rated, violent movie. And they had... I totally got lost. It was 2 hours from where I was. I was in Lakewood, and they wanted me up in Ventura, Studio City area. Right. And I am from Idaho. I've never been on more than a 1-lane road type thing, or 2-lane road maybe. Right. But, so I'm driving on the freeways. I don't have a cell phone. My agent gave me a pager because they're like, we need to be able to get a hold of you. And I'm like, but I don't want to get a hold of, I have a phone at home. So, I'm driving and I'm late because I went south on the 101 instead of north, or whatever it is. And it's early in the morning, rush hour, and I can't figure out how to turn around. I don't even know how to read the signs practically. This city works completely opposite than, Idaho. It's go to the Walmart and then turn where the McDonald's is, and then you'll be right behind Randy's, thrift shop. Right. And that's how you said directions. But so signs were a whole new thing. I got to read the signs while I'm driving. This is really hard. And so anyway, I showed up I think it was an hour late or something, that first job. Oh, wait, that wasn't the first job. The first job was a little commercial. And that was the second job. They had booked that first, though. Okay. And on the way to the commercial, which was in Santa Monica, I had a flat tire. Oh, so I pulled across 5 lanes of traffic and pull out my spare tire on the trunk and jack up my car and put on the new tire and slam the trunk. And the tow truck pulls up behind me about 10 minutes later. And he's like, wow, you're fast. And I'm like, well, what? That's how you change tires. Because, that's how you do it in Idaho. You don't have AAA and tow trucks. Anyway, I drove to this job. I did this little storyboard job, and I'm still best friends with this director who I worked for on that first.
Wow.
It was a Doritos commercial. And he's like, the agent told me you were really experienced. And I was like, man, they were just totally lying to get me in the door.
Right.
He's like, but you totally did it, and we still work together, and I help him out and he helps me out. So anyway, on the way home, my spare tire hit a huge pothole and it went flat. And this was at 10 o'clock at night. I was like in the middle of the ghetto where I didn't know what the ghetto was.
Right.
So I pull this junker off the road and park in a dirt place, and I don't know what to do. So I jack up my car, pull the tire off, and I start walking down the road with my tire that's flat, thinking I don't know what to do, but I'll walk until I find something. And there was a tire shop 2 blocks away.
Wow.
The direction I walked, it was open until 10 o'clock. I came right as it closed, and they had one tire that was my size. They put it on the tire. I walked back, put it back on my car, and drove home.
Oh, my God.
It was like, I mean, to me, I don't need a whole lot more proof that there's a God than situations like that. And I have a whole lot of situations like that in my life.
Goodness.
Anyway, so that was the first day of work, right? 2 flat tires on the way and back.
Why did I move to this city?
Yeah. Second day was when I had to go to Studio City to start on this movie. They gave me a script. I brought the script home and would draw it and then bring it back to them every couple of days. And they really liked it. And they were like, this is great, I kind of served as a cinematographer because they didn't plan anything out for me. So it's just, well, I guess that's what a lot of storyboards are. So that was real fun. It lasted a couple of weeks. And then ever since then, it was like one job after another. Commercial, music video, movie, commercial.
Wow.
And it was like I would come home from work, and I'd have a message on my answer machine. Tomorrow you're going to go to this address to work for this guy for this commercial and be there at 9 o'clock or something.
Wow.
And I'd show up. I had the Thomas Guide. I don't know if anyone outside of LA knows what that is, but this giant book of maps to map out all of LA.
Yeah. It's impossible to use, by the way.
It's impossible, but that was the only way to figure out where you're at the time.
It's as thick as a phone book.
Yeah. And that's just part of it. That's if you don't have Anaheim included,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I would just be lost all the time. And I'm horrible with directions. My wife will tell you I'm the worst at driving in directions. But that was my job for like 6 years. And that storyboard agency was amazing. I mean, they would double book me and I only had a couple jobs that didn't actually pay me.
Wow.
Which is rare, And they're small jobs, so it's like a day. So who cares? Let it go.
Yeah.
But that was quite an experience.
That is amazing that you really hit the ground running.
Completely, yeah. And the agent told me, he's like, when you go into these places, act like you're tired of doing storyboards. Like you've done it so much that you're burnout.
That's hilarious.
That's how you need to act. Don't be all excited, little schoolboy who just got off the bus and you can do storyboards now, And so I would try to do that, but I couldn't. There's no, and then how am I supposed to figure out what kind of storyboards? I've never done storyboards before. So I was like, I didn't even know how many panels to put on a page. And so I would approach it like, okay, after they gave me my assignment, I'm like, so how many panels do you like on pages when you get storyboard artists to work for you? They're like, oh, you could do them down the side or 6 going across if you want, It just kind of helped me realize you can kind of do it any way you want as long as it's clear,
Yeah.
But I would just play like, what's your favorite way to do this? Do you like marker or
right? Yeah.
Do you like tracing paper? Like, what do other artists do that you like?
Yeah, right.
And then eventually I started working alongside other artists too, because when you'd get called into an agency, which is different than my agent. I mean, I don't know what people know, but like an agency who comes up with the ideas for, say, Buick, and then they have to find directors who will direct. And so the directors pitch how they would how they would execute the boards to the agency. And then the agency picks which director will do it. Well, the agency makes a set of boards that are real generic. Then all the directors make a set of boards. So every now and then you'll get 2 directors wanting you to come work for them on the same pitch to the same agency.
Right.
And so, sometimes you'd be like, oh, I see what you're doing here, but the other guy's going to get it.
Wow.
Anyway, so every now and then there would be agency jobs. And You go in and they're just like you've seen in any of the movies where it shows storyboard artists, like tracing paper and you're drawing cars. And I don't know, I've seen a couple movies where it shows it pretty accurately. But there's a couple different storyboard artists working on different things. And so I learned an awful lot of tricks from those guys. And it was mainly just use a lot of tracing paper and Prismacolor black pencils because it looks really nice. You can trace anything. You can trace over your sketches, and it looks like your sketches are amazing because you've traced over them 3 times, and you just look really professional. I mean, it's photocopied, so you're not going to see the tracing paper at the end of the day. So I kind of learned a lot of those techniques.
Wow, that's cool.
It's funny, though, because a lot of the storyboard artists have like giant luggage suitcases that they wheel in with all this stuff like fans and lights and, light tables and all this stuff. And I would come in with like practically like a fanny pack type thing, like, I got some number 2 pencils and a ruler and, give me some copy paper.
Wow.
And I'll draw. I never really expanded much my stash of
your
stuff.
Arsenal.
Yeah.
Was this for you still a means to an end, though?
I never really enjoyed storyboards. I mean, even from the very start, it was like, wow, I'm making big money fast with this.
Right.
But it was always pulling teeth to do it. And then the best thing about it was getting done in 4 hours instead of 8 and being able to drive home in LA and do my own, do whatever else I wanted. That was like, woohoo, I made some money. I'm going home. That was the best feeling of the whole project. So I'm like, okay, something's wrong here. But also in that phase when I was doing storyboards, I never worked on much personal projects because the storyboarding side of it is so mentally demanding. It just sucks all of your mental bandwidth. Right. I don't know if anyone uses that term, but
I do.
I like it because you just get drained and you can't think anymore. You get home and you're a lump,
Oh yeah.
And it's more draining than doing when I did construction. I could come home and I'd be like, okay, let's start drawing. But if you're exercising your brain and thinking of all that, the angles and cameras and anatomy and perspective, as fast as you can and for 8 hours or something, it's like you're just done.
Yeah. And
you don't want to think anymore about it, And even still to this day, the thumbnailing stage is the hardest, most draining part for me. I can turn on music and color all day long. Yeah. But thumbnailing is like, 2 hours and I'm done, Yeah. So, storyboards was a hard thing for me. But it taught me to draw anything really fast. Anything anyone threw at me, I had to be able to draw it really fast. Yeah. And so that repetitive, exercise of doing that was just huge and speeding me up to be able to just crank stuff out.
Oh, it's amazing.
My agent actually sold me as the fast artist because I would take on the jobs that was like impossible, and all the other artists would be like, "You can't do, 50 frames in half a day. No, I'm not going to do that." And I'd be like, "Okay." Like I'll try. And so I'd go in there and I would just like bust them all out with a ballpoint pen. I wouldn't even sketch. I would just, the sketch was the finished, and just hammer through them. And like, I think the most I ever drew was like, I don't know, 130 or something boards in a day, And it's like these impossible jobs would get me kind of noticed then. And all the directors who needed the impossible timed jobs would call me. Yeah. And so I would just get really burnt out because I'm always doing the fastest jobs possible.
Yeah, right.
But it kept me busy because I was the go-to guy when it came to speed. So it was good and bad.
Yeah, right. That's amazing. So, and again, I don't want to get too much into reMIND. I want to save that for Paper Wings, obviously. But the animated short is an important thing, though, in connecting these dots. So was it around this time that you started doing that?
Well, I had a lot of little movie ideas that I kind of dabbled with, but I never did much with them because it was so draining with storyboards. And then I'm trying to think of exactly when I started. I did start working on it, but the first director I worked with, that guy, his name's John Lindauer. He's just the nicest guy ever. He kept teaching me things, and one of the things, he used to animate for Pee Wee Herman. He was one of the animators on the hot dog or whatever, I don't know. So he showed me how to use After Effects, and this is a long time ago when After Effects was really in his infancy. And so he showed me, okay, look, you can take pictures of this stuff, and then you can move it around in After Effects. and make sequences, and it's all done on the computer. You don't have to shoot it, you know? So he was showing me how to use After Effects, and he showed me how to use Photoshop, and just taught me a bunch of the stuff that he was doing. And I would stay late at night helping him and watching him do it. So I started dabbling with this idea, like, I want to do what he's doing. You know, this is a cool director who's able to just make stop motion animation. He can use the computer if he wants. He's a cool director. He's making tons of money doing commercials, and like, he's entered film festival things. And I was even in one of his commercials. I was an actor in one of his commercials, out of all things, a Sony commercial, which is bizarre because we were just good friends, you know? So I was like, okay, well, I need to start planning out my thing. And I was like, well, I know how to storyboard, so I'll first just start storyboarding. So I storyboarded this whole like 15-minute sequence, and it was mainly just the cat putting on this robotic suit because I just thought that would be cool. A cat putting on a robot suit, and then he teleports away. So I storyboarded all that, and I was like, well, I needed to have him teleport somewhere, so let's have him teleport to another planet that has lizardmen in it, you know. And so it just kind of kept expanding. And I had finished all these storyboards, and then I was like, I don't know After Effects that well. And so I went back to John. I was like, can you show me how to do that stuff again? So I started working on it, and man, it was just the crudest, badly animated. I would animate with tracing paper because I never worked with traditional animators. So all I knew was the storyboard technique of using tracing paper.
Right.
And so I would put little crosshairs on this tracing paper and then fold it over and then animate another pose and then fold it over again and animate another one. So I have these pieces of paper that are folded like a grid with like a head turning really badly. And then I'd have to scan it all in and rotate it and flip it. It was just really bad.
Yeah, that's rough.
But, you know, it's those things that really teach you why you got to do it a certain way.
Right.
And I learned really, really valuable lessons, what not to do. So then I kind of had, you know, really badly put together some horrible animation. And I told John, I was like, check this out. And he looked at it and he's like, I don't, you know, he's trying to be nice, but I could just tell it just wasn't good at all.
Oh,
you know,
no.
My art was good, but the animation, everything, timing, there was no sound design that worked. It was just horrible. But he told one of the companies that he worked for, said, hey, John, called him up. Hey, John, do you know any animators? We need someone to do a Barbie commercial. And John's like, well, Jason has been trying to animate. He kind of knows how to do it. And I've worked for the guy before because I've done storyboards for him. So he's like, oh, I totally trust Jason. So he calls me up. Hey, Jason, can you come and do an animation pitch for Barbie? I was like, I could come and show you my animation and you could tell me.
Yeah,
so
right.
I go to his studio and he goes, all right, here's where you'll work. Start doing it. Go. And I'm like, but don't you want to see my animation?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I trust you. And so I started pulled out the tracing paper and started animating this really badly animation of Barbie. I think I ended up pulling it into Flash or something and kind of cleaning it up in Flash. And then all the other designers and stuff made this 3D scene. And so all of our forces combined kind of made my animation look decent. And they got the job. And so I had to animate 8 Barbie commercials.
Oh my God.
And I had no idea how I would do it. And so, but they trusted me. And so I was like, you guys, I can do some stuff, but I can't do it this good. And at that time, Disney was laying off all their animation people, 2D animators. So they're like, well, let's get some people. So we put the call out like, hey, we need some animators to do Barbie commercials. And so all these top-notch Disney animators were coming, and I was interviewing them to see who would be able to help me animate.
That is awesome.
And so the rest of the thing, we ended up hiring this guy, Chris Sonnenberg, who's just a great character, just one of the funniest guys ever. And he was just like, no, you got to do this. And I know everybody. Let's bring in this guy, and he's a legend. He would be great at hair. And let's bring in this guy and that guy. So
wow,
they ended up buying animation equipment like the animation paper, and I would be like, how do you animate? How do you in between like that? Oh, it's easy. You do it like this. And they'd have in betweeners there, in betweening. And so I'd be like, can I in between some of the frames with you guys? And they're like, sure, here's how you do it. And so I was learning how to animate from, some of the best Disney animators and learning how to do it based on how I tried to do it. And my mind was just blown. So then, even though all these Disney animators made it look beautiful, the production house kept hiring me to be the art director or animation director of anything they did with cell animation.
Wow.
So again, my personal project,
right,
however crude it was, it opened the door, and I basically called my agent and said, I can't get any work for this month. And then the next month, I can't get any more. I mean, I don't need more work again for another 2 months. And after a year of that, I finally called him and said, you know what? I just can't. I'm done. I'll come and pick up my stuff, but I'm not going to do storyboards anymore because I'm busy, getting my own work. And so after that, it was just animation jobs forever.
Well, let just real quick, let me ask you, what Disney animators? Anyone we would know?
Well, there's James Baxter is the biggest name that I designed a bunch of characters for this Windows campaign. And Chris was like, you can bring in James Baxter. He kind of started his own studio. So I was like, okay, who is that? I don't know. So we brought him in, and the company kind of treated him like crap. Like, it doesn't matter who you are, like, just do the work. But Chris was just like, this guy's a legend. Huh. And I was like, okay, if this is a legend, then I want to, be nice to him. But anyway, he animated the characters I designed, and I just saw how amazing he was. And then I find out that he animated all these other things.
Yeah.
And then he called me to come help him working on Kung Fu Panda 1, the intro scene, because he was doing that. And that was my ticket into DreamWorks then. Oh my God. He saw that I could use After Effects and like all these other programs to kind of cheat animation to get a lot of shortcuts. And he would have me come and say, how do you use this program? How do you use that program? So I'd show him, I'd give him little tutorials and lessons. And then he's just like, come and help us because we want to make this really stand out. And so I was one of the two After Effects artists, did some of the background animation for him on that intro to Kung Fu Panda. And then they closed down, and DreamWorks kind of pulled everybody into DreamWorks, and we just continued the job there.
Okay, so that is incredible. So do you remember anyone else, though, who was there? So James.
I remember there was this one scene where Barbie and Ken were in a limo, and the camera's panning around him, and Hagar, is it Joe Hagar? He's one of the legends as well. I actually met him not too long ago at a convention, but he didn't know that I was the one kind of running the show because Chris did all the talking to him. Uh-huh. I remember specifically Chris like, this guy's a legend. Like, I'll do all the talking because you don't know the language.
Right.
I'm like, all right, go for it. Yeah. And he did this beautiful, amazing 3D camera move of Barbie's hair flowing all over the place and
oh, wow.
Characters. It's amazing what these guys can do. So all these really amazing animators were coming and just getting freelance jobs.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, that's why I always tell people, do your own project.
Yeah.
Like, do something you love and it'll turn people's heads. I mean, if it's not even that good, like the fact that you got something done, it turns people's heads. And you have plenty of time for on the job training to learn all the techniques and, get hammered over the head over and over again about how to do it the right way.
Right.
Like, but just get something done that you really love to do.
Oh, it's amazing. Okay. So James was at his own studio.
The studio I was at, Stardust, hired him, his studio, to do the character animation.
Right. So then you stay in touch with him. He starts working on Kung Fu Panda through his own studio. And then when DreamWorks pulls in everybody. And did James go in that first wave, or did he hold down the fort?
It was a real kind of sad situation at the time because everyone was just super excited. Like, we're doing this. They just finished Enchanted. It was awesome.
Right, which is amazing.
They started working on Kung Fu Panda intro, and everyone was like, this is going to be the new studio. This is going to be the new thing.
Right. James
is leading this thing. Let's do it. And then we all went on Christmas break, and when we came back, we were like all confronted with the sad news that James is going back to DreamWorks.
Okay.
And, I don't know what the exact reasons are.
Okay.
But we were like, oh no, this studio is not anymore,
Right.
This was the dream studio right here.
Right.
So we all kind of came through the back door because it had to get done. The project had to get done. And then we immediately were put onto the shorts like Secrets of the Furious 5, which is a kung fu short.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cell animation on that and After Effects needed and stuff. So I was just freelance at that point, but I was still in the door and I made friends with all the art directors.
But you were working in-house, but you were freelance?
Yeah, I was freelance at DreamWorks when they brought me in, but I was working in their studio. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I did that at Disney a few times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So because of that, I got to know the art directors and production designers and stuff, and we became friends, and because they're cool people. And then one day I was just like, you know what? This Viz Dev thing, these guys are doing awesome stuff, but I feel like this is what I would want to do because it's kind of like comics. It's finished art. It's not just storyboarding. And so I started asking some of the Viz Dev guys around me that I was friends with, like, do you think I could do Viz Dev? And they're like, well, do you have anything? I'm like, well, I've been working on this graphic novel reMIND. Here, I'll show you that. And they're like, what? What? Why are you not in Viz Dev?
Wow.
And I was like, well, here's some other, kind of concept design stuff I did for my director friend, the first guy I worked for, who hired me to do some concept designs for his movie pitch about a year before that. And that was my first attempt at coloring, really intense coloring. And they're like, I don't know why you're not in VizDev. Why don't you apply? Of course you'll be able to get in. And I'm like, really? Are you sure?
Wow.
Because in storyboards, I refused to color. I was like, I am not a colorist. Hire someone else to color my work if you want color. And that's what would happen. So I started showing it to more VizDev artists and saying, what do you think? And they're like, yeah. What do you think? Yeah. So then I finally got my nerve up to ask Tang Heng, who was the art director of Kung Fu Panda. I was like, hey, Tang, can I show you this? He's like, sure. And he was like, dude, you can do that. I had no clue. I thought you just did After Effects and animation. I was like, no, I'd love to do this. He's like, well, turn in your book and I'll tell Ramon. Right. Ramon's the production designer. So I talked to Ramon and showed him. He's like, yeah, well, I don't have complete absolute control, but when we're looking for someone for Kung Fu Panda 2 in VizDev, you could do After Effects, animation, and VizDev. That's a pretty good combination. So I turned in my book on his request, and we basically moved up to Glendale.
Right.
Without a confirmation that we had a job, because my wife was pregnant. She was about ready to give birth. And so we're like, we need to get out of this little house. We might as well move up there and be ready to go when we get the job. So I moved up there. And then about a month later, I got the job, and it was a full contract, like a 3-year contract. And so that's what started my VizDev career then.
Wow, it's just crazy.
And again, it was just working on my own projects. Like the concept design stuff I did was with John. We were just doing it on our own. He wrote a script and I did art for it. And
wow.
And he sold the script and my art helped it, And then I used that for my portfolio as well as reMIND. And that was my portfolio.
Wow.
It was all personal stuff. I didn't have any figure drawing or, any school assignments or anything or any jobs. I didn't have any Barbie.
Right.
I didn't want to taint it.
Right, yeah. Okay, so you did VizDev for Kung Fu Panda 2.
Yeah.
And what did you do on that movie? I don't think I've ever asked you that.
Well, it's interesting, and not a lot of, I don't think especially people in the industry believe me when I say this, but there's some scenes in Kung Fu Panda 2 where I did the VizDev for it, I designed the characters for it, and I animated it in After Effects, and I rendered it.
Wow.
So everything from start to finish, it's primarily in the opening shadow puppet sequence.
Which is gorgeous.
Yeah, it turned out great. And I was kind of the one, I don't want to be too cocky, but I was kind of the one who kind of figured out that shadow puppet thing.
Wow.
They were really struggling with how to make it look. And then one weekend I was like, I got it. I'm going to do this way. And I wasn't supposed to do the characters, but I just figured out the peacock character, how a shadow puppet should look, and made this scene with him. It's actually in the art book for Kung Fu Panda 2. And I showed it to Tang that next Monday. And he's like, dude, I think you got it. You nailed it. And so they kept putting everything on me like, okay, now do this scene. Now do this scene. And so an awful lot, like maybe 70% of those shadow puppet scenes I did the artwork for it. And then I was given they would have given me more After Effects animation to do, but I was really resisting at that point. I just I don't want to do After Effects anymore. I'm done with it. I want to do art. Yeah,
because I was a little bit confused about that, because it sounds like on Kung Fu Panda 2, you ended up doing maybe more work, but similar work to what you did on 1.
Yeah. I did a ton of work. A lot of the artwork in the credits I'd say 70 or 80% of that credits artwork is mine. That's all the shadow puppet style too. And then, I was one of the 8 viz dev artists who did viz dev for the whole movie too.
Right.
So my hands are all through Kung Fu Panda 2. And I think it's one of the most beautiful movies ever made in animation too.
It's beautiful.
Myself.
Yeah, it's really gorgeous.
So, and then I was on Panda 3 as well, doing viz dev as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I saw one of your backgrounds for that. You were doing an environment painting when I was like one of 2 times I think I came to your office.
Yeah. There was a couple things I worked on in between too. Like I worked on Crudes a little bit.
Okay.
And then I worked on, there's a lot of other stuff they have in development that's still in development.
Yeah.
And stuff that they've had in development that got canceled. And so, I've had a big range now in that world, and it's all in DreamWorks, of course. I guess I've had some other, freelance jobs, but I probably shouldn't talk about them.
Right. So what about painting, though? So, for example, the painting I just referenced in Kung Fu Panda and the Kreutz painting, I mean, those are paintings, right? I mean, they're very stylized, like the way you do your edges and everything. It still has that draftsmanship and that angularity even that's in the credit sequences, which is the credit sequences there's a similar shape language, but it is visually very distinct. Obviously, it's 2D versus a CG film. But the point being, your VizDev style, at least the pieces I've seen, are still rendered though. I mean, there's still what about that?
Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, and how did you learn to paint? I mean, you never were exposed to anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, how did that happen?
I mean, I didn't have any grasp of color theory really before DreamWorks. Like, if you look at the first chapter of reMIND, it's really washed out. I used washes pretty much for everything. So I would paint textures and kind of apply them and dial them around until I was like, it looks pretty good. But I didn't know why it looked good.
Right, you just kind of fought with it until...
Exactly. And I would find something that, like a reference piece that I liked that was washed out and maybe had a white background, and I'd be like, I want to kind of match that. So I could see something that I thought I could imitate. Right. But then, I started working with these guys that are brilliant at color and talking color theory all day long and naming colors that I don't even know what they are. Right. And it just kind of forced me into this world that I really wanted to learn, but I didn't have the confidence so I could learn it. But then when they hired me as a viz dev artist, I was like, well, obviously they must think I can, because they hired me, right? And so I really started just immersing myself in trying to learn this stuff. Lesson after lesson, just of the stuff I was struggling with, someone would come and work over top of it, show me what's wrong with it. And that would happen over and over again until it was approved. Right. What better art education can you get, from these guys that are just brilliant at it? And so it was just kind of like this situation at, the design studios where I was surrounded with Disney and DreamWorks animators showing how the system worked and how to do this and how to in between and how to animate and how to do overlap and all that stuff. So again, it was just not feeling like an idiot and going across the hallway and saying, hey, Tang, can you come look at my painting again? Because I don't quite know how to make this work. Yeah. And there was a certain amount of I just had to let go of my pride and say, I am not good at this. Teach me and absorb it. And I think a lot of artists have trouble doing that, but I don't know. I didn't feel like I was anywhere at their level. So if I wanted to be able to get the work approved, it needed to be, something else needed to happen to it. And so through that endless paint overs and examples and they would show me how they would do things, and I would bug other artists too, other viz dev artists around me. How are you doing that technique? How'd you get that color combination? And that's just why my paintings were able to look the way they did. And you can see through reMIND from start to finish, it just gets really, really colorful. And it gets to the point to where it's insane color theory kind of. Yeah, right. And I almost went a little overkill on it towards the end, but I love looking at it as a whole to see the progress that I made because I didn't know how to do it at the start. Right. And at the end, I was doing things that even now when I look at it, I'm like, that's some pretty good color theory. How did I figure that out? And I don't know if I could recreate it again,
Wow, that's amazing.
But there's people there like Ramon. Ramon Zebach is just, he does color I don't understand. It's just such another level, and it's so natural to him. And you just want to sit there and study everything he does. And it couldn't just be like a paint stroke on top of another paint stroke. And you're like, how did he do that? Yeah. So it's just stuff like that. Just really neat to be a part of. And I'm hoping, now that I've left it, I guess my only question now is if I'm going to keep pushing myself as an artist. And I think I will, because it might be in other areas, because I feel like every project I'm trying to learn a new thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out something that I feel like doesn't work, and I'm trying to solve a problem. So it may be different, though. It may be color theory that time. And then, when I was doing animation, it was timing and motion and all that stuff. And then it's different storytelling forms, So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's awesome, man. That's so exciting. One thing I wanted to point out there about your relationship with your art department. You and I have had very similar careers when it comes to animation. We both don't know how we managed to make it into an animation studio. Yeah. We both were continually thrust into situations where we were completely unprepared but willing to learn, and we both nagged our fellow coworkers to teach us things. And we both were, here's that word again, kind of unapologetic about our naivete, about our inexperience. We were like, well, I got nothing to lose. If I try and pretend I'm going to fail and it's going to be embarrassing, versus me just being open about what I don't know. Yeah. And most importantly is this trust aspect and in the relationships. And I look at my own career, and to this day, I do not know how I got my first job at Disney. I look at the portfolio that I submitted, and I look at the work I did on even my first movie there, and I just go, I do not know how. And it's, you know what? It's because I had people who believed in me, who loved me and believed in me, and just they saw something that I could not see in myself. Yeah. But I was willing to try. I was willing to try to do the work. And this is why when I see people being buttheads online, I go, oh man, you're making the worst mistake. Now, we should just be kind to people because they're people. That's all the reason you need. To be kind only because you don't want to burn a bridge potentially is that's a selfish reason to be kind to people. I think that is fundamentally flawed. But even still, these people aren't even being kind for selfish reasons, And it's like kindness and trust is really the undercurrent of basically every successful career that I have been a witness to in animation. And I'm sure I could say the same for many careers outside of animation, obviously. But in my experience in sort of the corporate environment has been animation, and just one after another. It's about trust and loyalty and generosity and, mutual trust. Like, people give you some trust, and then you realize that now you have to earn that trust retroactively. Yeah. Right. So it's like they take a chance on you, Ryan Carlson, Fred Warder, Ellen Jin, these art directors took chances on me. They took chance after chance after chance on me. And I realized I can't let them down. I have to listen and learn, but at the same time, work my butt off to make them proud, Yeah. It's like a parent, you just want to make them proud of and be glad that you're their son. That's I felt like that a lot under Tang and Ramon. I was just like, these guys, they put a lot of faith in me. I want to make them really happy that they chose me. Not just because I want the movie to be good, but because I want them to say, I'm glad I picked him, Yeah, right. Well, we'll leave it at that, and we'll go into visual storytelling, reMIND, Sithra, quitting DreamWorks, all that kind of stuff in the Paper Wings episode. But Jason, thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom. And I enjoy talking to you just immensely. I don't know. I really can't Thanks, explain man. How much I enjoy it. I really appreciate the opportunity. I totally dug talking to you too. I love how Jason is so competitive and yet so humble simultaneously.
You can tell that there's a fire behind there, but it's so not restrained, but just it's comfortable. Yeah, it's not aggressive. It's a calm. Yeah, I love that. I think as artists, and I'm speaking generally, I think we tend to not have a very healthy relationship with the idea of competition. It always seems to be one extreme or the other.
You're either super competitive and, you punish other people and you punish yourself, and, it's just this really unhappy existence, or just there's complete avoidance to competition. There's no, it's this kind of internal thing, and I just want to track my own progress. I just want to improve on my own, and I'm just comparing, and I never compare my work to others. Where my attitude about that is, of course you should compare your work to the work of others. If you want to do this for a living, you have to measure your own work. I think you'll grow faster, and I think you have to have an idea of what the market demands, what is valuable in the market. I think that's essential. I think that there are people who succeed. I think the problem happens is when we are pursuing our goal of becoming a professional artist and we consider the competition and then destroy ourselves as a consequence of learning the truth that our work is not there yet.
Right. We can destroy ourselves in two ways, I think. We can either become demoralized by it and stop producing. And I think there's a definite fear there where you think, oh, I'll never be good enough. And so you stop. And then there's the kind of beating yourself up.
Right. Yeah, when it turns into punishment, anytime you're punishing someone else or punishing yourself, that's bad. That's a bad realm to be in. But being honest, even if that honesty is unflattering, I think that's the only way that we can really improve.
Right.
If you're going to decide to get in shape, then the implicit truth there is that you're not in shape. Right, because then there would be no shape to get into, and I'm speaking from experience here, firsthand experience, and it's like that. There's an acceptance there that has to happen, and then that is where action begins, and action leads to results. So yeah, we're interested in your thoughts on this topic, and Matt, would you be so kind as to share the discussion topic for this episode?
What are your thoughts on competition? Do you embrace it? Avoid it? Why? Can a competitive attitude benefit artists without letting it consume them? And if so, how? And you can answer that at oatleyacademy.com/JB2 for Jason Brubaker 2.
Yes, the number 2, not
the number 2.
Not 2 written out. I should have said that at the beginning. And don't forget to join the Oatley Academy Backstage Pass notification list at oatleyacademy.com/BSPN. Friends, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your encouragement, your support. We couldn't do this without you. We wouldn't do this without you. Stay strong and stay close. This podcast is a production of the Oatley Academy of Visual Storytelling. I'm Chris Oatley, your host and producer. Our editor is Kevin Chandler. Our production manager is Anya Marcos, and our editorial assistant is Ejua Ebeneba. Our theme music is provided by Storybook Steve. Recurring musical segments are provided by Storybook Steve and Kangaralian. Find more inspiring art and story podcasts designed to help you make a living from your own imagination at oatleyacademy.com/shows.